This is the Garden of English. I'm Tim Freitas, and I'm here once again with my friend Jamie. And this time we're going to talk about the 5 things that we do want to do when writing a college essay. So if you want some tips on how to do that, make sure to stay tuned. All right, so we are back this week once again to talk about the 5 things that we should do for when we write our college essay, or at least think about when we write our college essay. And this is our second part of a multi-part series. If you missed what you shouldn't do in your college essay, you can probably access that by clicking here. Okay, but nonetheless, let's actually get right into things here, Jamie. So things that we should do that probably stem from things that we shouldn't do. Let's hear about the 5 and let's talk about them.
Yeah, so as we talked about with the don'ts, Tim, it was, I said that was actually more crucial because it's very rare that an essay is going to get you in, but it can keep you out, right? If it's a competitive school or you're on the bubble, depending on what kind of student you are. So, but the do's are still very important as well, and they kind of counteract the don'ts, right? So the first one, counteracts the don't be boring one from last episode. So, and that is, it's best to tell a story if you can. This is not a time for a formal paper that you might submit for one of your classes. This is a time to tell a story about your life or someone in your life that brings your unique voice. It's really hard, and sometimes it's general. What's my voice? But it makes me, when I'm done with the essay, to some degree say, I want to know more about you. Not, thanks for a great paper on Dwight Eisenhower. I don't, or a great paper on the attributes of honesty. Okay, but what about you? And so if you tell a story, it draws the reader in.
Okay, so I want to do something a little bit more concrete, as opposed to just talking about ideas. Right. So I once had a student who was a huge history buff, and he decided to write his college essay following the format of the Declaration of Independence. He just declared his independence from high school. Mm-hmm. Boring or not boring?
That's great.
All right.
I mean, depending on how well, probably from what you remember it, so it's probably done well.
Yeah, it was the best. It was the best college essay I've ever
that
read.
Immediately draws me wow, that's creative, right? So obviously he's a specifically pretty creative person. And so that's some people. You're maybe not the most creative, not everyone, you might be great in math, writing is not really my thing. So you're maybe not going to do that. It's okay. But if you draw me in with a story, like something that says, just like picking up a book, and you read it, I want to read more. Because again, we said last episode, admission counselors are going to read a couple thousand of these, sometimes more. You apply to UMass Amherst or something like that. And they're going to do a lot of skimming. I skimmed a lot of essays. I said, okay, this is the, I struggled with my parents' essay. And they kind of are in categories. That's just how it is. It's not to be offensive. It won't keep you out, but I'll kind of go over there and we're going to look at your grades,
right. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to just say, here's what you should do and think about in order to make sure that your piece can stand out.
Yeah,
right.
That they might actually say, I really, and that happened to me. Even though I was in a huge hurry, I'm reading through the whole thing going, And I talked to one of my colleagues, hey, you should read this. This is amazing. Right. Declaration of Independence or something like that. I reached out to one of my colleagues who's a director of admission at Marist College in New York, and he said he gets tired of students asking, what do admission counselors want to hear, right? And so this is your voice. So your story, and that's what they want. They want, what do you want to say, not tell us what you think you want us to hear.
Right. Okay. So be you in this piece.
Exactly.
Oh, excellent. Exactly. Right. But do that with stories from your life instead of keeping it nebulous.
Right.
Okay. Right. All right.
Number
what about number 2?
Is compliment the rest of the application.
Compliment with an E, not with an I. Right.
Exactly. So it makes you a little bit more well-rounded. So a good example would be, let's say that you, on your activity sheet, you're the captain of the football team. Football is a big part of your life. That's great. That's who you are. One of your recommendations is from your head football coach, and that's great. Don't write your essay about football, right? Because, again, there's nothing wrong with writing an essay about football, but you're going to start looking very one-dimensional. Okay, football sums up his life. And nobody is summed up with one thing, right?
Yeah.
So write about some challenge you've had academically or personality or a fun story that kind of brings out your sense of humor. If you're a huge academic, you got 10 APs and you great on your SATs, and they're going to see that. Maybe don't write about your academics, right? Write about something else that that just kind of brings in and again complements or brings something else into the picture.
So show something new in the essay that perhaps can't be brought out in kind of the statistics that are tied to us, right? Because as human beings, we're not statistics. I mean, the government might give us an SS number or whatever other type of identifier, but we're actually breathing individuals that have depth to our character. And that's what we want to showcase.
I loved when I would see a 3-sport athlete. Clearly, sports was huge to them, and their essay was about something completely different. And I love sports, right? So I would have been fine, but it was just said, you know what? He or she recognizes that's not all there is to life, and so whatever that might be, compliment.
Oh, excellent.
3, it is kind of goes with number 1 a little bit, but it's have an attention grabber if you can, and this would say don't necessarily, as much as our AP English teachers might hate to hear it, don't necessarily follow with your college essay the formal thesis statement, going to make an argument. That's great that you learned that and use that in your college classes. And I'm not saying be all disorganized. There should be an organization to your essay.
Because we talked about that in our last video where it's like, hey, let's make sure we keep our mechanics in order here.
Exactly. Right. Grammar and have a structure, but you don't have to start out with this is my thesis statement, this is what I'll prove, and here's my footnotes. This is you. So you remember, you're trying to, boom, if you don't want me to skim it and not really read it, you want to draw me in. I was drowning in the pool, and it's like, well, I want to know what's going to happen to this kid, or whatever it might be, it hits you, and you're like, I'm in, I want to know. So if, like, I was talking to my son about this because he's got to do this soon, and he went on a really impactful missions trip. I said, you want to start it with something really impactful, like an event that happened. You were at an orphanage in Haiti with some kids in wheelchairs. Like, describe that, because that's like, whoa, like that's something. And then back up and say, why are you on that trip? Instead of saying, I went on a trip to Haiti. We flew with our church. You've lost people by that. Yeah, another missions trip. Good for you.
Right.
Instead, grab them, and then you can fill in from there.
Okay.
4 is something I always struggle with. Be careful of length, right? So, so you
I've known you for a long time.
It's tough for me.
Me too, as a teacher.
Yeah, when you're good at writing or you're good at speaking, sometimes it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
So it's going to give you the parameters anyway, right? The Common App, which a lot of you will do, or if you're doing a specific college application, it'll say be this amount of words or this amount of pages. So stay within that for sure. But just be aware this is not a time for a 4-pager, right? They're not going to read all of that. Yeah. So to go with that, because you're going to struggle with that if you're going to say, all right, he wants me to compliment. So I want to show I'm honest, and I want to show I have a sense of humor, and I want to show you're not going to be able to accomplish all that. It's okay. Just focus on 1 or 2 of those kind of things. Like, again, the idea is not that I'm going to learn everything about you through your essay. It's that I want to know more. Mm-hmm. Like, you intrigue me with the 1 or 2 sort of things that you focused on with your story and your essay done. And now it's like, man, this person is pretty cool. I wonder if I spoke with them or if I was their roommate, I'd really like to get to know them.
So I guess for the advice of what you should do here is you should focus on one character trait that you don't think is represented in your resume, and then allow that one character trait to dictate the length of the piece as opposed to trying to say, here's everything about me.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So length, but going along with that, like saying, don't try to tell everyone your whole life story.
So do focus on length, but make sure that you focus on that length by thinking about the character trait that you're trying to complement your application with.
Right.
Awesome.
So number 5 is something I've kind of already mentioned, but I wanted to specifically say it. You're looking to bring out your personality, right? That's why you don't want to do canned essays on the internet or have someone else write it or write something that's very like a lot of your research papers, they're not looking for your personality. They're looking for you to do research and to write about something.
Provide your insights.
Exactly. You can provide
your
insights.
Typical English class.
Exactly. Yeah. But this is, we want to know you, right? So here's a good example. I actually had a colleague give me an exact quote. Started the essay with, when God created my family, he hiccuped. And then she was like, drawn in. Like, what does that mean? Got a hiccup when you made your family. And then the essay went on to kind of describe the interaction of the family. In so doing, described her, like who she is as a person, why family matters to her, right? But she did it in a fun way that had an attention grabber and brought out her personality. And my colleague was like, you know what? I wanted to get to know the student a lot more after I read the essay. I was like, I would love to invite her to my family reunion, you know.
Right. Now, I know that you've mentioned a couple examples in the past like the past video and this video.
Mm-hmm.
You actually, I know that you've been out of college admissions for a few years now, but
Yep.
you actually reached out to some of your colleagues and
I
were
did.
like, hey, can you give me some of those things that were impactful to you
Yes.
that you would want to spread in a video like this? And these are the things that they gave you.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Yeah,
Absolutely.
so some of that I kind of had from my experience, but also put in here. I said, all right, that's kind of a consistent, so we'll put that in the top 5. They gave some good antidotes, but I kind of tried to sprinkle them in. Like, you know, be your voice. Don't try to tell us what you want to hear. Don't be dumb and write an essay that they're going to keep and remember forever about you making out with someone on some October night. That's something that my colleague had an essay, you know, probably 10 years ago, and she still remembers it.
Right. Well,
Not for good
I was
reason.
saying, you know, if she remembers it. But,
Infamous,
right,
though,
and now,
not famous.
yeah, and now we're talking about it on a show like this. Okay, so let's do our quick 5 recap on things to do.
Yep.
And then we can start putting this together in future videos where we'll talk about how do we organize this and then how do we actually produce it. But I'm not going to call you in for that. That's where
That's
my
your job.
expertise comes in.
That's right. That's right.
For the lack of a better term. So here we go. Let's do
Amen.
number 1.
So number 1 is it's best to tell a story or stories that is creative rather than be boring.
I want to tell a creative story.
Yep.
Cool.
Number 2, compliment your application. Give them something that they don't have in other aspects of it.
All right. Tell them that I'm not just a number and that
Right.
I'm not just a GPA, but I'm a living, breathing human
Right.
being that they want to get to know.
Or I'm not just a fullback on the football team, or
Right.
or a quarterback. I'm,
Right.
I'm
Gotcha.
someone else. Number 3 is have an attention grabber. Try to draw them in right away, and then rewind.
Now, just real quick on that, is it okay if I take a little risk with that attention grabber? Or should I kind of be like, you know, or do I want to think about what we said in the last video where it's like, you don't know how someone else will interpret it always because people are different. Like, what do you kind of think about that?
I think it's okay to take a risk, but, you know, again, I think like if you use profanity there, if someone else called you something and it's in the essay, it's probably going to be okay. Like, I was walking down the street and this really old lady called me a bleep, you know?
Right.
I'm like, I'm not going to blame you for that. You didn't say that, right? So I'm going to be like, wow, why did an old lady call you that? And I'm
Right.
in. So it's risky, but it can actually be effective.
Gotcha. So risks are okay, but just make sure that they're calculated risks
Right.
as opposed to just saying, you know what, I want to do what I want.
Right.
It's okay.
Hey, man, I swear in my everyday life, they need to know me. Well, okay, if you want to get into college, you gotta play the game a little bit. It's like
Okay.
a job interview. You know, once you're in college, now you can tell everyone your opinion. if you
Right,
want.
about everything like that. So
Right.
yeah, I think that might be good advice. You know,
Yeah.
take this kind of like a job interview.
That's what it is.
How do you want to present yourself as being the
Yep.
special person that you are,
Right.
but also in the manner that's as appropriate as possible? What would you think about talking about in a job interview and be comfortable with, and then presenting that forward to show that these stories make up who you are as a person?
That's right.
Cool.
So number 4 was be careful of length. You want to focus on like 1 or 2 things. Be careful of length. And number 5 is let it bring out your personality. If you're funny or you have certain aspects sensitive or let it kind of show people who you are.
Right, and now just real quick, one thing about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if I don't have those attributes that people typically think are the ones that are more positive, like I'm funny or I'm creative? What if I don't feel like that's who I am? How can you give me like a quick tip of like how I could potentially convey like the importance of being sensitive or the importance of, you know, because that is an important character trait, one that we certainly need in a contemporary sense, but
Like for instance, introvert, right? So if you're an introvert, that's not technically, or that's not typically, I should say, an endearing quality. You kind of stay to yourself. You'd rather probably read a book in your room than go to a party. Most people are like, you know, okay. So, but if that's you, a good way to do that maybe is to sort of pick on yourself a little bit. Like, you know, you can kind of talk about, here's all the attributes you're supposed to have. and I have none of them, and then go on to say, but here's who I am, and this is what I do, and I'm artistic, and I draw, or whatever it might be.
And then you could even move to like though I'm not these individuals, there's a reason why, because I'm not that person, I'm me. Right. And super cool.
People will really, really enjoy that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, Jamie, I really appreciate you having you here for the last couple weeks. Man. I noticed that you didn't change. Luckily, I did. Okay. Maybe you should take a shower next time, right? But if you appreciated the video or you took anything from it, I'm going to ask that you just click the like or the subscribe down the bottom there. You can always help the garden grow in other ways, but the easiest way is indeed to like and subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram. We have merch for sale down in the description. We've got links to all of these things. You can donate if you want as well. But as always, we like to remind you these videos are free. So we're going to come back in probably next week or within the next few weeks, and we'll actually start talking about how do we plan this essay. I will not write the essay with you, but we will talk about planning it and trying to pinpoint the right story to make sure that you can be you in your college essay and also stand out. Without further ado, I think we're done.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.